maybe there are as many opportunities in media as a whole, perhaps not quite so much the written word.
Hi, I'm here with Huw Turbervill, Managing Editor of the Cricketer magazine and formerly of the Telegraph. Huw, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks. I'm good. Great to have you with us. So Huw,
Thanks for
today
having
we're just going to talk a little bit on reporting and reporting about cricket. But before we get into that, just a little bit on your journey and your earliest memories of cricket.
Playing with my best friend Neil in his garden. He taught me the game, or introduced me to it in Halesworth in Suffolk. And I've just written about this in the Cricketer, actually. That was the summer of 1981. And I was oblivious to the fact that although I played cricket, the game was actually being shown on BBC. And Ian Botham was having, his most amazing summer against Australia. And I didn't watch a second of it. I mean, once I played with my friend for about 6 hours, would go back, then have, ham and chips, whatever. And I don't know, watch Blake Seven or something. So it didn't work, it didn't work on that level for me, that it was on the telly as well. It was just something that I did in the garden. 1982 was the first summer I started watching it. And then I played at school and so on. Yeah. But 82 was the Pakistan test at Lords was the one that was the first day I sat down and watched a day's cricket. And Pakistan got 2-9, 5 for 3. So I didn't pick a very good day.
Yeah, one of those days.
If I'd watched the test before, the first test, and the test after, the third test, England won both those, so it would be much better. But I chose a real bad day. But I suppose I saw good Pakistan batting, to be fair. But
I like it. And so just moving forward a little bit, Huw, I mean, How did you come to be where you are today? I mean, what interested you in writing about cricket and coming up through those ranks?
I just I loved writing about sport, and I made my own newspapers called Huw's News, which I used to hand round to the neighbours. The next door neighbour, Jeff Burt, he used to give me quite comprehensive feedback and start teaching me how to use newspaper columns rather than just writing across the screen. That was fun. English was my sort of passion at school, English and sport. So all my A-level choices and my degree choices were geared to being a sports journalist. I think my backup was going to be a sports teacher, but everything really was geared to being a sports journalist, and I managed to get my way into the local newspaper, the East Anglian Daily Times in Ipswich. Tony Garnett, sports editor, marvellous man, and I had 3 or 4 years there. And it started by typing in the Greyhound cards with ambiguous, rude names that didn't fool anyone. What else did I do? I did BMX and football and cricket and table football and all sorts, slot car racing, all sorts of nonsense. And then I took a gamble, Dick Whittington style, went to London and spent a year, which was largely a waste of time, at the Evening Standard as a news sub-editor. But I suppose it's a good thing to have on your CV. And then I wrote to all the sports editors of the national newspapers. And John Ryan of the Sunday Telegraph had me in, and I was Shield Berry's bag man, news and quotes. I did lots of sub-editing shifts. And so I had 7-8 years juggling Sunday Telegraph a couple of days a week, Daily Express a couple of days a week. Then took a staff job at the Daily Telegraph, doing some cricket writing, but not as much as I'd like. But I did it for the security because I had kids. And then my dream job came along in 2015, and I went to the Cricketer magazine, which I'd been reading, since the 80s and CMJ era and all that.
Wow, what a journey! I mean, there's been a lot of variety in there.
Mainly cricket writing, some football writing, some other sports writing, lots of sub-editing shifts, sub-editing the Daily Express writers and the Sunday Telegraph writers with all their pros and cons of that. Lots of variety, but lots of evening shifts and lots of weekend work. So I made a fair few sacrifices, missed a few weddings, which the people who I snubbed haven't forgiven me probably to this day. You had to make a fair few sacrifices, but I got there in the end. Yeah, sort of. I'm not resting on my laurels, but I'm happy at the moment. Yeah.
So I guess now just moving, formally into the topic of today on reporting on cricket, especially. I mean, first of all, could you just describe some of the types, of reporting there is on cricket? There's a few different ways that you can do it. It's one of a.
Yeah. What springs to mind, because I did this thing in the cricket a few years ago about how to report on a T20 match, because it's very easy to sort of knock 700 words out about a sort of long day's county play, 100 overs or a test match or whatever. But what's the best way to report on T20s? I sort of did it in three versions. I think it was a Middlesex game at Lords. And so I had the kind of crickety description, prose, dent ease, wanted the covers in the fourth over. Higgins hooked for six, 7-8, posted an imposing total of 158 for three. Or you could sort of do the sports news angle. Middlesex's T20 record isn't very good, but it should be because the crowds are 28,000 and it's highly lucrative and they played in the Champions Trophy once and blah, blah, blah. What else? So you could go for the human angle side of it, I suppose, that Morgan, rare appearance in the Middlesex colours after leading England to the World Cup. So it's sort of different aspects, the human nature, there's the sports news business angle, there's the hard stats look that, Craig Fears and people like that have brought in recently with writers or I suppose they're called writers, Ben Jones and Freddie Wild and people, that a left-hander scores 36% of his runs against other left armers, that kind of thing. So yeah, you got technical, you got human interest, you got sports news off the field stuff. So yeah, there's different sort of ways of looking at it, isn't there?
Yeah, and I like that. And I guess the trick is to get a balance of them in your stories.
Probably is. Somebody said they liked something I wrote last week, human interest thing about Luke Wells, that he'd gone back to play against Sussex, his old county, now in the colours of Lancashire, and he was known as the most sledged man in England when he was at Sussex. And I stood on the boundary edge. I'm very lucky to be one of a few journalists to be allowed in. And I just listened out to hear what the Sussex fielders were saying to his old colleague, So I kind of favour the human interest stuff a bit more. Need a bit of sports business. You have a few romantic cricket writers who don't sort of touch on the fact that a county's 36 million in debt or something. And sometimes that's important. But yeah, I suppose a eclectic mix. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I suppose, I guess for me, I mean, I once spoke to a journalist, a well-known one locally here, around my views on cricket, having just won the Premier League locally. And I think it's a real art. And the one thing I learned from it, I suppose, being an outsider and not really a written, my English is not very good. And that's why I'm on video.
Right.
It was that it's very difficult to portray the tone of a scenario within words. And I think that that is the real art within cricket. And I just wanted, for those out there, especially anybody young or new to cricket, what's the importance to you of the written word for cricket?
Pivotal, vital. It's what I love. I find it sort of absolutely cathartic and therapeutic to sit down and compose a story. It sounds a bit pompous, but there's nothing more I love than immersing myself in sort of writing an article for 2 or 3 hours and, just getting it all out on paper first time, going away, making a cup of tea, coming back, tidying it up, making another cup of tea. Third time, sort of rejigging a few bits. Fourth time, perfecting it, spell check, blah, blah, blah. And then producing that at the end of it is that's kind of my heaven, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, brilliant. That's lovely. I thought it'd be a much longer answer, but you've got it there much, much quicker. I like that. I like that.
Genuinely love it. And on my days off, I'll sort of, I find the kind of Christmas holidays drag a little bit sometimes. I've started some silly blog about classic TV and stuff as well. I love all the sci-fi stuff. So yeah, I just love sort of composing and writing things, really. That's what I love.
And so if I was I guess the crux question for me now is, if I was a young person, why would I become a cricket reporter? And also, what advice would you have for those people?
Well, Mark Baldwin, I don't know whether he'd like me to quote this actually, but Times guy. I mean, he said I think he's on the record as saying he feels sorry for youngsters who sort of come into it because there's not as much money as there used to be. So you'd have to have the passion. You'd have to have an element for the love of it, really. But there's different angles. There's sports PR, there's club PR, comms, the analysis thing that I was talking about, the Ben Jones, Freddie Wild types. There's sort of different angles. I don't know how lucrative those jobs are. But I mean, if you're going to start working in a newspaper, then I mean, these companies like the Telegraph and the Mail and Express, I think, do 2-year graduate trainee schemes. That's one way of doing it. Or I still think, getting a job on a local paper is brilliant. It teaches you so much. But of course, there are fewer jobs on local papers anymore, and unfortunately, there are fewer local papers. But yeah, if you love it, I would never tell somebody not to do it. You've got to follow your heart, haven't you?
I've thought a lot about this around how we get more volunteers in cricket, and I know the ECB are pushing very hard on volunteers in cricket. And one aspect of local cricket that I think is skipped over that wasn't previously and is actually readily available to do, either through play cricket or locally through the clubs, is to actually do match reports on the games.
Yeah.
If you were someone who'd been a bit isolated for the last sort of 18 months, wants to get out there, go down to their local club, and wants to add something, is that a viable option, do you think? Do you think it's something, would you have any advice for those people just to try writing those reports?
Yeah, definitely. I used to do Halesworth Cricket Club reports for the Beccles and Mungie Journal. I mean, I didn't actually think of that, but I mean, that's something I enjoyed doing. I wrote a journal about the 1994-95 Ashes tour that I was on. I went to watch with a friend for about a month, and I sent that into the sports editor of the East Anglian Daily Times. Right. I mean, they'd say that about TV, wouldn't they, in drama, that Russell T Davies and all that, their advice would be right. Just get stuff on paper, just do it. You're not going to achieve stuff by just sitting there doing nothing. It's not going to just do itself. So start a blog, start a podcast, start a journal. Let's start a website. That'd be my advice. Yeah, absolutely. Get right. Yeah, just do it. And if you want to do it about your local club, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, there's access problems at the moment, so you probably, although you could start doing it on all the kind of streaming for the championship, couldn't you? So, yeah, that's sort of opened up another world now, hasn't it? You might not be able to go there in person, but there's all that stuff on. You could have 9 screens on, couldn't you, and be flitting back and forth, writing about various players. So yeah, no, right, by all means, just get it done. Yeah, right.
I like that, Huw. And just moving towards the future, I mean, how do you see? Obviously, you've got a wealth of experience in this industry. How do you see the future of reporting on cricket moving forward?
Well, even more analytical and statty, I suppose. If T20 and the 100 and T10 become the primary formats, if they're not already, I mean, it's just going to get ever more sort of technical, isn't it? And everybody's records against left-handers and left-armers and right-armers, and left-handers records against leg spin and off-spin and slow left arm. And hopefully there's still a room for romantic writing and classic sort of writing. There's certainly not the time ran out for the kind of prosaic, boring writers, if I'm honest, who just talking about ease and wanting the covers in the third over. But so a fusion really of classic wordplay and language with all this technical stuff. Hopefully there's a future for those two worlds to coexist.
Well, thank you so much, Huw. I think that's a good place to end on our topic of the day. However, before I let you go, I have a couple of quick-fire questions.
Yeah.
So far, I've now picked up the not so quick questions.
Okay.
Because everybody seems to give 3 to 5 answers for every question, but we'll
give it
a go. So, Huw, your favourite ground?
Hove, probably. My mum and granddad used to take me there as a kid. We watched the Sussex team of John Barclay, Dermot Reeve, and the Wells brothers, and all that. And the Oval. We used to have mum and I used to have an annual trip there for the Test matches during the 80s and 90s. Scarborough. I had a happy trip up there once. Yeah. I think the Chelmsford, fond memories as a kid going there. Yeah.
And your favourite current player?
Let me think. Been following the career of Dominic Sibley with interest since he when he was 17 was at Whitgift School near where I live, and at the Oval he scored a double century against Yorkshire on my birthday. My wife and I drank a bottle of champagne that we'd won at the school quiz, and we watched him get a double century. So I probably follow his fortunes with interest. Who else? Hasib Hamid. I met him once, and I am very sad that he has slipped out of the reckoning after such a fantastic debut series in India. And he's one of those players now, like it used to be with Mark Ramprakash, that when they're in, you kind of watching the scores update and you just hope he doesn't get out. Yeah, both opening batsmen, funnily enough, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. My favourites as a kid, Derek Pringle, bizarrely. Oh yeah, 30 tests for England. And I used to sit there listening to him in class with the earphone up my sleeve, like this, pretending to listen to. I'll say Latin now, and I'll get in trouble for being a snob or whatever. But I'm afraid we did have to do Latin at school. But I remember it distinctly like this, listening to him. Pringle get 63 against India in 1986. And I got my school report said that I was brilliant at Latin and blah, 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 90%. And when the exam came through, I got 30%. And the teacher was very surprised that I hadn't fulfilled my promise. But I distinctly remember it. I was listening to Derek Pringle score 63 against India. His test best. That's just one lesson. But I used to love the old radio and also cricket dice in the boring lessons. Everything that wasn't English or history, basically, or art.
Okay. Your favourite umpire?
David Shepherd was funny, wasn't he, with his standing on one leg when it was 1-1-1, and I felt sorry for him when he got it so wrong in the 2001 Test at Old Trafford against Pakistan when he missed all those Sack Lane Mushtaq no balls. Dickie Bird's funny, isn't he? We at the Cricketer ring him now and again. He's poor old boy. He's been lonely because of lockdown. Steve Buckner was pretty cool, wasn't he? With his was it slow death, sort of very slow, you know. Finger. Rudy Kurtzen, was it?
Buckner was that one, wasn't he? He used to just do the.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so almost sheepishly, didn't he?
Yeah. Just put his finger up and look.
Not looking at the bats and sort of sheepishly. Right. Okay. Rudy Kurtzen was a slow death, was he? I quite liked old Billy. Silly Billy Bowden. Yeah, I quite liked all that. There's nothing wrong with that bit of that. Yeah. Michael Goff did well, didn't he, last summer?
Yeah. Quite a few people have mentioned him, as well as a couple for Nick Cook, who's I find him quite entertaining.
Right. My least favourites are the old so-and-sos who give me out OBW every other Saturday.
That's it. Yeah. I've been out OBW already twice this year, and
every time hasn't happened yet. But I just hate over appealing. The match I played last Saturday, and every time I hit my pads, and then the second wave appeal, they go and it's turned down. They go and I just pressuring the umpire. Hate it. I find myself getting entangled in verbals now as well with the opposition. I've got to let it go. Club cricket's really getting to me at the moment, actually.
A bit like that, Nick. It's like that. It'll come
twice this week. I found myself up in the middle of the night at 4:00 pondering why I'm in the fifths and not the fourths and all this sort of nonsense.
What's the best match you've ever reported on?
I mean, it's a cliche, isn't it? And it's boring, I'm afraid. But I did do all 5 days of the Edgbaston test in 2005. That's the first time I've ever done all the test. And I was lucky, wasn't I? That was one of the greatest tests of all time. But I did do all 5 days, 4 days for the Daily Express and 1 for the Sunday Telegraph. And it would be remiss of me not to pick that one. But I've got very fond memories of the SCG test in 94-5. That was part of that trip I made to the Ashes. Fantastic test. It was a draw, but I wrote a big match report about that and got my job in Ipswich. I think partially because of this report I'd done. So I'm fond of that. Yeah.
And finally, what's the best place you've ever been to for cricket?
Yeah, so I was very lucky to do a few tours when Shield Berry was having a little break from the Sunday Telegraph. So I went to Zimbabwe in 2001. and the Harare Sports Ground before all the trouble started, really. So that was lovely. I enjoyed my little 2 weeks in Bangladesh. I had 3 or 4 weeks in Sri Lanka, which was rained off, unfortunately, half the time. But I went to Kandy on the train, which was a fantastic experience. Probably New Zealand as well. I've been to Queenstown, which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, first time I ever went to Lords in 2000 professionally, I suppose, was probably another highlight. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. I think the message there is, if you're young and you want to get into cricket, you'll see the world.
I was lucky. I was very lucky. I mean, it was just right place, right time, really. I just, before I had kids, or and if I'm honest, newspapers probably wouldn't allow that luxury now of letting a main. I mean, not saying Shield was a slacker, because he still spent 3 or 4 months every winter abroad, but he was allowed then to skip the odd fortnight, and I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time to do it. But my advice to youngsters, and I think I know other professionals who advise youngsters, never ever turn anything down. And if it means missing a wedding, and don't give the managers or the license to cut you off. You just can't turn the assignments down, I'm afraid. And you'll get some grief for that, but dedication, as Roy Castle said, that's what you need.
That brings us nicely onto the final part of our interview today, which is, I always ask the same question at the end of all of our specials, and it is for you, Huw. It's, what is the single most important aspect or value of cricket to you?
I suppose I fell in love with it in the 80s with Lemmy and Beefy and Gower and Willis and all those great characters. Sort of, I fell in love with the characters, I think. So I love writing about characters, and so I love writing. I love cricket. So writing about cricket obviously was perfect. It just fills a hole, doesn't it? When it's not happening, you need other things to replace it. So that's the watching aspect. The playing aspect. My happiest days in my lives probably were playing for Demon Valley Cricket Club in Woodbridge in Suffolk, with the butcher, the candlestick maker, the teacher, the orchard manager, all these different characters, and learning how to eat curry and drink beer and play cricket in the fresh air and fantastic green surroundings, and switching technology off, and the immense satisfaction of batting and scoring runs and taking wickets. And my life would be not the same without it.
I mean, it's a lovely place to end, you. I mean, thank you so much for your time. I know you have a really busy schedule, so it's been a real privilege to spend some time with you and hear your story. Thanks.
Don't worry. And I hope all your viewers are aware of the Cricketer magazine, because it's amazing how a number of people sort of seemingly quite surprised when they're told about a magazine and about cricket. Well, but I mean, yeah, and county fans, especially, we have stacks of county cricket, making up for the the fact that the broadsheet newspapers don't do so much on it anymore. So yeah, strongly recommend it. Sorry for the plug.
No,
Sorry for the plug. But I'm passionate about it, and it's a great product, and I think I really want people to see it.
Yeah. No, long may it continue. It's brilliant.
Thank you. So 100 years old this year, so we've taken our guard again and aiming to make it a daddy 100.
Brilliant. Thanks, you.
Okay, Callum. Thanks for having me.